A 76-year-old grandmother was humiliated in front of dozens of passengers. But what the airline didn't realize was she had the power to shut them down, and she did. They say you can tell a lot about a person by the way they carry a coat. Gloria Jefferson didn't throw hers over her shoulder or sling it across her arm. She folded it neatly, just like she had done for over 50 years, ever since her first job as a systems engineer for a now-defunct aircraft manufacturer. She was dressed in a pale blue silk blouse, pearl earrings, and dark grey trousers. Her silver hair was pulled back into a smooth bun. No jewelry except for a slim gold band on her right hand, and an old Timex watch she still wound every night. She looked like someone's grandmother. And she was. But she was also someone no one on that flight recognized. Not yet. Flight 218 was boarding out of Gate B4 at Phoenix Sky Harbor, a typical late spring afternoon. Slight delay due to headwinds over Louisiana. Most folks were annoyed. Gloria wasn't. She never rushed time. She stood patiently near the gate, reading a printed boarding pass and glancing up only when the gate agent called, "We'll begin pre-boarding for our first-class passengers now." She stepped forward with ease, not needing assistance, though the gate agent offered. "Thank you, but I'm all right," she said with a small smile. The first-class section was half empty when Gloria found her seat, 2A. She placed her coat gently in the overhead bin and sat down. Her bag, a leather satchel with her initials pressed into the corner, rested on her lap for a moment before she slid it under the seat. She glanced around. A young man 2 rows back was already on his tablet. A flight attendant offered her water. Everything felt smooth, until it didn't. As more passengers filed in, she took out a folded photo from her wallet. A girl with bright braids, standing next to a science fair display board. Gloria smiled softly. That's why she was flying to Savannah. Her great-granddaughter, Brielle, had won first place in her district's robotics competition. She wanted Gloria there when the city awarded her. She was refolding the picture when a second flight attendant approached, followed by a man in a navy blazer with a tablet in hand. He wasn't smiling. "Ma'am," the man said, not quite making eye contact. "May I ask you to step off the plane with us for a moment?" Gloria blinked. "Excuse me? I understand this is inconvenient," he added quickly, lowering his voice. "But we've had a reassignment situation. We'd like to speak with you at the gate." Passengers nearby looked up. The young man with the tablet paused his video. Gloria didn't raise her voice, didn't demand an explanation. She simply asked, "Am I being removed from this flight?" "We just need you to step off, Mom." No explanation. "We're handling it internally. It's a random reassignment." Her lips pressed together. She stood up slowly and reached for her coat. People were watching now. A woman in 3C muttered, "What's going on?" A man across the aisle frowned. Gloria turned to the flight attendant who had first offered her water. "Would you mind handing me my bag?" "I'd rather not bend." The woman hesitated, then nodded and passed her the satchel. Gloria thanked her. As she stepped off the plane, she didn't look back. She walked down the jet bridge beside the man in the blazer, who still hadn't offered his name. When they reached the gate, he gestured toward the podium. "We're going to find you another seat. It shouldn't take long." Gloria looked at him and then, without a word, pulled out her phone. She walked a few steps to the side and made one single call. "Ruben," she said when the line picked up. "We'll need to review our funding allocations for Tarmac Air. Something happened just now. No, I don't want to explain over the phone. Just be ready when I land." But what neither the airline nor the onlookers realized was that the quiet woman they just pulled off a plane could shake the entire system with one sentence. Ruben Dillard didn't ask questions on the phone. That was part of why Gloria had trusted him for 20 years. He had been with her through boardroom wars, 4 federal infrastructure shifts, and a major overhaul of the aviation grant program. If she said, "Be ready," he knew to clear his schedule. Back at Gate B4, the man in the navy blazer was already walking away, tapping at his tablet. A younger agent, a woman maybe in her mid-20s, stood behind the counter now, eyes darting between Gloria and the screen. The words on her lips felt practiced, like she'd been told what to say before even understanding why. Ma'am, we're working on getting you on another flight. Unfortunately, we're a bit full today. Gloria kept her gaze fixed. I'd like to know what flight I was reassigned to. I'm checking. Give me just a second. Gloria didn't respond. She took a seat near the gate window, pulled out a small notebook, and began writing. She wasn't scribbling or venting. She was documenting. Names. Times. What was said. What wasn't. A few feet away, a man named Daniel Kurtz, seated with his family, nudged his wife. Isn't that the same lady they just pulled off the plane? He asked. His wife frowned. Yeah, and she looked like she had a first-class seat. Think she did something wrong? Doesn't look like it. Just old. Another woman, traveling alone, took out her phone and quietly snapped a photo. By now, murmurs were spreading through the gate area. Passengers who had seen the moment began speculating. Was it a security threat? Was she on the wrong flight? No one said it out loud, but it lingered just behind their eyes. Why her? Meanwhile, inside the cockpit of Flight 218, the pilot hadn't been told anything specific. The memo simply read, "Seat reassignment due to gate protocol issue. Passenger deboarded without incident." Back in the terminal, Gloria stood up and approached the gate counter again. The young woman looked up quickly. "Any update?" Gloria asked. Calmly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. It looks like the next available flight isn't until tomorrow morning. We can arrange a hotel if you... I'll make my own arrangements, but before I leave this terminal, I'd like the name of the supervisor who approved my removal." The woman hesitated. "That would be Brian Linwood." "And his direct supervisor?" I'd have to check for that." "Please do." The girl scrambled. Gloria waited. Not with impatience, but with precision. Meanwhile, her earlier phone call had already set things in motion. In a quiet office in Baltimore, Reuben Dillard opened the Jefferson Family Trust's database and pulled up Tarmac Air's funding ledger. Over $137 million in the past 4 years alone. Carbon footprint reduction projects, fleet retrofitting, staff development grants. Gloria had signed off on nearly every single one. He leaned back in his chair. "God help them," he muttered. Back at the airport, something strange began to happen. A woman who had been watching quietly approached Gloria. "Ma'am," she said softly, "I saw what happened." "That was wrong." Gloria looked up. "I work for the airport's operations crew. What they told you wasn't policy. We don't randomly reassign first-class passengers, not without cause, and definitely not someone who was already seated. What's your name, dear?" "Janice." "Janice Conway. Thank you for your honesty." Janice lowered her voice. "You don't have to tell me who you are, but I can tell you something's off. We've had issues here before. Quiet ones. Things that get brushed away." Gloria nodded. "They usually do, but this time, something inside her decided not to let it slide. Not because it hadn't happened before, but because it kept happening to the wrong people. And everyone just kept going." Reuben Dillard sat in a quiet corner of his home office, blinds half open, tie loosened but still around his neck. He hadn't even made it home from the airport when Gloria called. Now, her voice echoed in his head like a switch flipped in slow motion. He didn't need coffee or a second opinion. He needed a pen, access to their cloud drive, and the exact wording of every agreement they'd signed with Tarmac Air since 2018. On the wall behind him hung a framed photo of a younger Gloria standing next to a retired Air Force One. Reuben had taken that picture himself, back when she was the only woman in the room, and the only person who had read all the specs without missing a line. He called her back, not even waiting for her to land. "Gloria," he said, as soon as she picked up, "I've got everything pulled. I think you're going to want to hear this." She was sitting in a quiet cafe just past security. No luggage, just her satchel, tea, and the same calm posture she always kept in board meetings. "I'm listening. Of the $137 million we pushed to Tarmac in the last 4 years," Reuben began, "over half went to tech upgrades they claimed were to reduce emissions. Guess what? They haven't reported any follow-up metrics. Not once. Typical, Gloria murmured. But here's the thing, Reuben continued. There's a 12-month clause. If they breach public conduct terms, we can freeze everything. Not just new funding. All disbursements. Retroactive hold. Gloria stirred her tea once. That wasn't just a breach. That was arrogance. You want me to prep a statement? No, she said. Not yet. Reuben paused. You want to give them a chance? No, Gloria answered, her voice steady. I want to give them time to realize they've already run out of chances. Back in Phoenix, a communications director for Tarmac Air, Daryl Sumners, was fielding a storm of internal Slack messages. Word had spread about some elderly passenger being removed from Flight 218, but details were fuzzy. One message stood out. We might have just kicked off Gloria Jefferson. Daryl's hands froze above his keyboard. He reread it. Twice. Wait. The Gloria Jefferson, he messaged back. The reply came fast. Yes, exec team scrambling. Her foundation handles our biggest green grant. He stood up so fast his chair tipped. Within minutes he was on the phone with his VP. Then legal. Then someone from external affairs. Meanwhile, Gloria was texting Reuben again. Have you heard of a girl named Marissa Wynne? She wrote. Not ringing a bell. Why? She just emailed me. Says she works in admin at Tarmac. Said she saw an email about my removal. Says someone used the word optics and mentioned too many non-premium flyers in the front rows. Reuben didn't respond right away. Then, do we have her number? We do now. That afternoon, Marissa Wynne was sitting in the break room of Tarmac's headquarters in Des Moines, Iowa, chewing on the inside of her cheek. She hadn't meant to get involved, but the email thread made her sick. The way they talked about Gloria, like she was some sort of inconvenience, a problem to fix quietly. So she'd found Gloria's foundation email, hoping someone, anyone, would take her seriously. Now she was staring at her phone. Unknown number calling. Hello? Marissa, this is Reuben Dillard, Executive Director of the Jefferson Family Trust. I believe you sent us a message earlier today. She almost dropped the phone. Yes, I did. I'd like to ask you a few questions. Don't worry, you're not in trouble. In fact, you may be one of the few people doing the right thing. Marissa exhaled, slowly. I just didn't want it to disappear like everything else. It won't, Reuben said. But while Reuben was reassuring her, Gloria was already writing the first line of the letter that would change everything, for the airline, for Marissa, and for anyone who had ever been quietly pushed aside. By the next morning, Gloria's letter was typed, printed, and hand-signed in blue ink. Not because she didn't trust e-signatures, but because some messages carry more weight when the recipient knows the sender sat down with intention. The letter was addressed to Elliot Renshaw, CEO of Tarmac Air. No copies, just one envelope, sent by overnight courier to the airline's executive offices in Scottsdale, Arizona. Reuben had read the draft 5 times before Gloria finalized it. No dramatic language, no threats, just facts. Gloria referenced her removal from Flight 2018, the grant conditions, and the Trust's responsibility to ensure that all funded partners operate with accountability, transparency, and a shared commitment to human dignity. The final line was short. Effective immediately, the Jefferson Family Trust is suspending all current and future funding for Tarmac Air. It took 14 hours for the letter to land on Renshaw's desk. It took 20 minutes after that for panic to ripple across the company. In an open office floor on the 3rd level, Marissa Wynne stared at the Slack channel she wasn't supposed to see. Someone had forgotten to restrict permissions after midnight. Messages were flying. We need PR on standby now. What's our exposure? Anyone confirm this isn't fake? A junior executive named Trent Douglas sent a message to a private thread. I told you this would blow up. You don't manhandle a woman like that and expect her to disappear. By lunchtime, business news outlets were catching on. Reuben had quietly tipped off 2 contacts. Nothing flashy, just enough to confirm the story was real. One outlet ran a piece titled, Philanthropist pulls $800 in airline funding after onboard incident. The article didn't even include Gloria's photo, just her name, the trust's estimated assets, and a short summary of the removal. But it was enough. Social media didn't wait for the facts. Videos from Flight 218 started popping up. Grainy, phone-shot footage showing Gloria rising from her seat, calmly collecting her belongings while the staff stood nearby. Someone caught the moment she asked for the name of the supervisor. Another video had the woman in 3C saying, "She didn't do anything. Why are they taking her off?" Thousands of shares in under an hour. Then came the analysis. Threads, commentaries, speculation. One post from a college professor in Oakland read, "The most dangerous thing in America is a quiet black woman with money, memory, and motive." Gloria didn't respond to the attention. She didn't post. She didn't grant interviews. She had tea with her neighbor that afternoon and helped organize her church's scholarship committee that evening. But across the country, pressure mounted. A retired aviation executive, Clara Beecham, wrote an op-ed in the Salt Lake Tribune, where she now lived. She'd worked with Gloria in the 90s, and the piece was titled, "You Don't Know Her, But You Should." Clara described Gloria's career, the patents she helped develop, the airlift programs she quietly improved during her time as a DoD consultant, the scholarships she created under 5 different aliases so no student would feel labeled. She didn't build her legacy for attention. Clara wrote, she built it for progress. At Tarmac Air's headquarters, the atmosphere thickened. 3 board members called for an internal review. One suggested a temporary step-down for Renshaw. Investors were watching. Their green sustainability report was due next quarter, and now looked deeply compromised. Some employees, like Marissa, quietly celebrated the chaos. Not because of schadenfreude, but because, for once, it felt like someone paid attention. Really paid attention. By that Friday, news anchors were saying Gloria's name without stumbling. Commentators debated the ethics. Airline analysts predicted investor fallout. But Gloria, she was already packing again. A different trip this time. Because while the airline scrambled to manage the damage, Gloria had one more flight to catch. One where she wouldn't be removed, silenced, or second-guessed. Savannah's airport was calm when Gloria landed on Friday evening. No cameras, no fanfare, just the smell of salt in the air, and the soft clack of heels as she walked through the terminal with her overnight bag. She hadn't said a word publicly, but the country had already made her the center of a conversation she never asked to lead. By then, the story had reached national prime time. The footage had made its way onto evening segments across networks. Major anchors called it a moment of reckoning. Talk radio buzzed with callers, some outraged, others suspicious. But more than a few asked the same question. How many times has this happened to someone who didn't have power? In Washington, a senator from Oregon referenced Gloria during a transportation oversight hearing. He didn't name the airline. He didn't have to. He simply said, "When billion-dollar companies forget that the people they serve are watching, it's only a matter of time before someone reminds them, gently or not." At a high school in Alabama, Brielle Jefferson was sitting at her lunch table when a teacher pulled her aside. "Brielle, your great-grandmother, she's all over the news." Brielle blinked. "For what?" The teacher held up her phone. Brielle stared at the screen for a few seconds, then gave the faintest smile. "Y'all don't know her like I do," she said. Meanwhile, Tarmac Air's stock had dipped 7 points by noon. Their PR team scrambled to push out a statement full of corporate speak. "We regret any confusion, evaluating our internal procedures, committed to inclusion," but it didn't land. Commenters tore it apart. No apology, no admission, no accountability. Marissa Wynne, sitting in her car on her lunch break, saw the post and shook her head. "They still don't get it," she muttered. She hadn't spoken to Gloria again. She didn't need to. The fact that Gloria had read her email, had listened, meant more than any public shout-out ever could. Back in Savannah, Gloria finally arrived at Brielle's house just after sunset. The porch light was already on. A glittery hand-painted sign hung from the railing. "Welcome, Gigi." Brielle burst through the door barefoot, hair tied up in a scarf, and threw her arms around her great-grandmother. "You didn't tell me you were famous," she said through a grin. "I'm not," Gloria replied, smoothing her coat with one hand. "I'm just tired of being quiet." Inside the house, while Brielle reheated some leftover gumbo, Gloria sat with her daughter, Brielle's grandmother, Lorraine Pierce, a retired school principal. "They had the nerve to touch you?" Lorraine asked. "After all the work you've done for these people?" "It wasn't personal," Gloria said. Lorraine raised a brow. "Didn't feel impersonal. They didn't know who I was. That's the problem. They didn't care." The three women sat down to eat. No reporters, no speeches, just gumbo and cornbread and 3 generations of black women who had learned how to carry pain without losing grace. And across the country, people kept talking. Civil rights groups released statements. Young interns in D.C. passed around screenshots of Gloria's letter like a sacred text. Social media turned her quote, "We must ensure a shared commitment to human dignity," into a banner image, a rallying cry. Even in places that rarely paid attention to this kind of story, people noticed. A retired baggage handler in Fresno watched the news and whispered to his wife, "That could have been my sister." At the airport in Charleston, a ticketing agent quietly slipped a handwritten note into the carry-on of an older black woman traveling alone. It simply read, "I saw what they did to Ms. Jefferson. Won't happen here." But while the country debated, analyzed, and speculated, Gloria wasn't watching headlines. She was watching her great-granddaughter pull a small robot from a shoebox and explain how it used sensors to avoid hitting furniture. The press conference wasn't Gloria's idea. In fact, she tried to turn it down twice. But Reuben had called her early Monday morning. "Gloria," he said, "I think it's time. People are listening. You have a chance to shape this moment, not just react to it." She didn't say yes right away. Instead, she asked a question. "Where would we do it?" "I've got offers in D.C., Dallas, even L.A." She paused. "No. If I'm going to speak, it's going to be at the Civic Center in Macon, Georgia. That's where I gave my first talk in 1974, when nobody thought a black woman should be explaining satellite telemetry." Reuben smiled through the phone. "I'll book it." That Thursday, Gloria stood behind a plain wooden podium in front of a modest audience of reporters, students, and local residents. No flashy banners, just a banner with the Trust's emblem and the Georgia flag hanging beside it. She wasn't flanked by lawyers. She didn't bring a PR handler. She didn't read from a teleprompter. She just told the truth. "I didn't come here to get revenge," she said plainly. "I came here to remind us what we've forgotten. Respect is not a gift. It's a right." People leaned in. Phones recorded. Cameras rolled. I was asked to leave a flight without explanation, and the reason given was something vague enough to sound clean but hollow enough to sting. I complied. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I made a phone call, and that phone call reminded a billion-dollar company that dignity has a memory. She paused, not for effect, but to breathe. Too often, we make excuses for institutions that mistreat people. We say they didn't mean it. We call it a mistake. We let them hire a consultant and move on. But what if every single quiet dismissal meant something? What if we started holding people accountable before they're trending on the internet? The room stayed silent, save for a few shuffling feet. I wasn't the first person this happened to, and I won't be the last. But maybe now, the next time a gate agent sees an older black woman with a boarding pass, they'll hesitate before assuming she doesn't belong there. She stepped back, gave a small nod, and left the podium. No Q&A, no press handshakes. Just her truth, delivered and done. Later that night, a local reporter named Tasha Rowe, writing for the Macon Ledger, published a short op-ed titled, "Gloria M. Jefferson didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard." The article went viral. Clips from the speech circulated everywhere. Celebrities quoted her. Activists quoted her. But so did nurses, teachers, bus drivers, small-town mayors. And maybe the most surprising? So did flight crews. Across several airlines, conversations started happening behind closed doors. Training programs were revised, internal policies re-evaluated. Even Tarmac Air, still reeling from financial hits, released a second, far more sincere statement, finally naming Gloria and offering a direct apology. It was too late to fix the money, but some damage goes deeper than dollars. Reuben called Gloria the next morning. "You saw the coverage?" "I didn't need to," she replied. "I said what needed to be said. That's enough. You're a national figure now." She chuckled lightly. "I've been a national figure since 1983. They just didn't know." Back in Savannah, Brielle asked her great-grandmother if she'd ever fly again. Gloria smiled. "Of course I will, but next time I'll bring 2 things with me." "What?" "My boarding pass," she said, "and my name." But while the world now knew her name, Gloria had one final message, one that wasn't meant for headlines, but for anyone who had ever been overlooked, dismissed, or pushed aside. You don't have to shout to be heard. But when you finally speak, speak so clearly that silence is no longer an option. The morning sun broke through the kitchen blinds as Brielle poured 2 glasses of orange juice. Gloria sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, eyes watching the girl with quiet pride. No press, no podium, just real life. "You know they're still talking about you online, right?" Brielle said, sliding the glass across the table. "Let them," Gloria replied. "They'll stop when someone else does something louder. But don't you care about how big this got? I care about you, and I care about what kind of world you grow up in. That's bigger than a news cycle." Brielle didn't say anything at first. She just sipped her juice and looked out the window. Then, "Gigi, were you scared when they told you to leave the plane?" Gloria looked at her for a long moment. "Not scared. Just tired. Tired of how quickly people forget your worth when they don't recognize your face." She leaned back in her chair. "You get to a certain age, and you think maybe you've earned your place. Then someone, somewhere reminds you, you're still expected to prove yourself." Brielle nodded. Slowly. "But you didn't yell," she said. "You didn't cry. You just made that one call." "That's the thing about power," Gloria said softly. "Real power doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to know when to speak." The room fell quiet again. The kind of silence that holds meaning, not absence. Later that day, Gloria took a walk through the neighborhood park. Kids ran by, chasing a soccer ball. A woman pushing a stroller smiled at her. Nothing dramatic, just life, as it should be. A teenage boy sitting on a bench looked up from his phone. "Hey, excuse me? Are you Ms. Jefferson?" Gloria stopped. "Yes, I am. My mom told me about you, said you taught a whole country how to act right without yelling once." Gloria smiled, just barely. "Tell your mother I appreciate her words. And you, remember this. If you ever see someone being mistreated, don't wait to be asked. Just stand beside them. That's all it takes sometimes." He nodded. "Yes, Mom." That night, Gloria sat alone on the porch. The moon was out. Crickets chirped in the distance. She held the same folded photo of Brielle from her wallet, now worn at the edges. She thought of every woman before her who'd walked away quietly when mistreated, of the ones who never had the chance to speak, or the platform, or the phone number of someone who could make things happen. She'd carried all of them with her on Flight 218, even if no one else could see it. And now, maybe, just maybe, the next time a decision gets made in a boardroom or a policy is drafted in a back office, someone will remember the woman who sat in 2A, folded her coat, and left without raising her voice. Because this story wasn't about punishing an airline. It wasn't about trending for a week. It was about showing that no matter how old you are, no matter how quietly you live, when you carry yourself with dignity and when you know your worth, people will feel it. Even if it takes the world a little too long to catch up. So if you're listening right now, whether you're 12 or 75, remember this: you never know who's watching. Carry yourself like your name means something, because it does. And if you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or made to feel small, take this story as your reminder. You don't have to fight every battle out loud, but when the moment comes, don't flinch. Speak clearly, move with purpose. Let them remember the silence that followed your name. If this story moved you in any way, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, the smallest gesture becomes the loudest voice.